Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Off the Bench podcast. My name is Robert Sellers. Tonight, I'm instant reacting to the Indiana Hoosiers' absolute drumming of the Oregon Ducks in the Peach Bowl. The Indiana Hoosiers win 56-22 to advance to the national championship game. My goodness, wow, 56-22. Listen, I picked Indiana, after the Penn State or after the Oregon game in October. I said on this podcast, I think Indiana's going to win the Big Ten. I think they're going to win the national championship, and I think Fernando Mendoza is going to win the Heisman. So I've been on Indiana for a really long time. And at the beginning of the playoffs, I told myself I am picking Indiana to win the national championship. And there's video evidence of this in the past of the other videos that I've made. Even I, who have been one of the biggest Indiana supporters all year long, even I did not think that this would be a 56-22 boat race in the semifinals with the Indiana Hoosiers dominating the Oregon Ducks. I think this is a really good Oregon team. This is a great Oregon defense. They've been playing really, really good football for a long time, and they just got skull drugged by Indiana. They got shoved in a locker. They got absolutely dominated. And I mean, just what an unreal performance from the Indiana Hoosiers once again. Once again, I swear I've never seen a football team prove people wrong at a more consistent basis than Indiana. I mean, I've heard it all with the Indiana Hoosiers. I've heard they haven't played anybody yet. And then they beat Oregon. And then I heard, well, maybe they're good, but they're not going to win the Big Ten. Then they beat Ohio State. Then I heard, well, they're good, but they're only Big Ten good. When they go up against SEC teams, that's the real test. Then they smoked Alabama 38-3. Then it's okay, you know what? They're a great team. I get it. They're phenomenal. But are they good enough to win a national championship? Well, they just beat Oregon 56-22. Can they finish it against Miami? We'll see. I'm going to talk more about that as the week goes on. But I just wanted to say, this Indiana Hoosiers team, this Coach Cignetti story, the era of this Coach Cignetti, we got there 2 years ago, took over an Indiana program that was the most losing program in the history of college football, brought them to the playoffs, and now brought them to the playoffs again, and now has them in the national championship game. This, in my opinion, is the greatest story in the history of college football. To me, nothing else compares. This is so phenomenal of the story. It's unreal. If you were to tell anybody 3 years ago that the most dominant college football program right now in the sport would be the Indiana Hoosiers, I mean, that is nuts. That is astronomically insane. That is crazy to say to any fan that has watched college football at a consistent basis any point of their life. Like this is what is happening in Indiana is really, we can't wrap our minds around it. It is nuts. There has never been a team in the history of college football to go 16-0 in a season, and Indiana is 1 win away. And I don't know what the spread is right now on the Indiana-Miami game, but I imagine Indiana's favored handsomely. And frankly, they should be, because they have proved it time and time again that they are the most well-coached team in college football. And frankly, it's not very close. I wanted to say, I've heard a lot of people talk about, would this Indiana team beat LSU of 2019? Is this the best college football team of all time? Where do we rank them in terms of all-time great teams that have played in this great sport? Well, in my opinion, personally, I think this is the best coached team of all time. And I'm not going to say that they have the best players or they're the most skilled or they're going to have the best NFL talent. That's not what I'm saying. I think that Indiana executes what they game plan to do at a higher level than anybody that I've ever seen in the history of college football. Their coaching staff deserves so much praise, so much praise should go to this Indiana coaching staff for game planning, for scouting teams and finding their weaknesses and attacking their weaknesses and figuring out what they're going to run. It's all just genius. This coaching staff is so good. And I mean, they coached circles around one of the best coaching staffs in the country in the Oregon Ducks, as they've done all season long. I mean, this Indiana team really is unreal. And again, I mean, when I've talked about Indiana football now, I've watched a lot of the greatest teams in the history of college football. I remember when I was watching 2019 LSU, I remember I said to myself, wow, Joe Burrow is out of his mind. He had more 400-yard passing games than he had less than 300-yard passing games. He was crazy. Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson were unstoppable. I looked at the players on that team, and I said, this team is just unreal. They're so good. And then I watched 2020 Alabama, coached by Nick Saban, and I said, wow, Devontae Smith, that is the best wide receiver I've ever seen in college football. He is unstoppable. He is so, so good. And both of those teams loaded with NFL talent. They had so many studs, so many guys that could take the game over, that could dominate, that could just be such a marvel, and it's a cinematic picture to watch and look at because they were so, so good and they were playing at such a high level. But when I watch the Indiana Hoosiers, that's not what I think. That's not what I see. That's not what I watch. When I watch the Indiana Hoosiers, I don't say to myself, wow, Fernando Mendoza is just crazy good. He's just head and shoulders better than anyone else in the sport. I don't say that about Elijah Surratt. I don't say that about Robin Hindi. I don't say it about Pat Coogan or that defensive line or D'Angelo Ponce or whoever you want it to be. When I watch this Indiana team, I say to myself, that is the best unit, the best team, whether it's the offensive line, the defensive line, the quarterback doing his job, the wide receivers winning in man coverage, whatever it is, this is the best team that I have ever watched in college football. And no, I don't think that they're as talented as 2019 LSU or 2020 Alabama. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that all that they do as a team together, they play selfless. They don't make mistakes. They don't miss throws. They don't fumble the ball. They don't drop passes. They don't miss tackles. They don't get super bad penalties. They play discipline. They play selfless. They play as a team. And that is why they've been able to compile a roster with no 5 stars, with only 7 4-stars, and dominate the national picture like they have been doing. It is completely unreal. It's completely unheard of, and I don't think we're gonna ever see anything like this ever in the history of college football. I mean, when I look at this box score, even Fernando Mendoza was held under 200-yard passing again. Like Indiana just steamrolled Alabama in the Rose Bowl and steamrolled and Oregon in the Peach Bowl. And in neither of those games did Fernando Mendoza throw for 200 plus yards. That is nuts. Like that is crazy. Their leading rusher in this game only had 63 yards rushing. Elijah Surratt, their leading receiver, only had 75 yards receiving. They don't have players that just dominate football games. That's not what this Indiana team does. They just play so sound and so fundamentally perfect as a team. It is unheard of. Like we have never seen anything like this in the history of college football. And I mean, if you look at things that people have said about Indiana, and one of the things that I've heard, like this rumor that has been floating around about the Indiana Hoosiers, is that they're a fantastic football team, but they lack depth. I've heard people say, what if their starters go down? Their backups are really not nearly as good as any of these other teams that are loaded with talent. That's not been true. I mean, just look at the defensive line. Stephen Daly has been out for the year since that Ohio State injury, and even Mikael Kamara was battling injuries late in this game, but it didn't matter. Like they had guys like Daniel Nduake, I don't even know how to pronounce that name. He only had 1 total tackle all year long, comes out in this game off the bench, 2 sacks against Oregon, against an offensive line that is riddled with NFL talent. Guys like Dominique Radcliffe, backup defensive linemen who come in and dominate football games. Like their twos play just as good as the most elite teams in the country's ones. Like this team is so well coached. And these are not the most talented guys in the world. Like I imagine you've never heard of Dominique Radcliffe or Daniel Ndukwe. I think that's how you say that name. I bet you'll never heard of them because they're Indiana's backup defensive linemen. They're not flashy recruits. They're not big time transfers. They're not super well known guys that have dominated the scene the last couple years. They're just really well coached football players that have bought into the program that Curt Cignetti has created, and they're playing off the bench, and they're doing such a good job in what they are asked to do. So I've been really impressed with the depth of Indiana. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. Indiana, this is just a couple of really interesting stats in this game. Oregon had more first downs than Indiana in this game. Oregon had more total yards of offense in this game. Like Oregon, they made 3 really bad mistakes. That's the main reason this game was a blowout. The pick six, the sack fumble, and then the Dante Moore really weird, swing pass. The ball hit the arm of another running back. I'm really tired right now. I'm sorry, but that's just all I remember from that play. Indiana basically got spotted 21 points in this game in the first half, and yet still, they won 56-22. And you might hear people say, well, yeah, they blew them out. Yeah, they played so great. But it was not Indiana dominating. It was just Oregon giving them the ball. It was Oregon playing a really bad game, and Indiana was just able to take advantage of that. Well, yes, Oregon played a bad game. Yes, Oregon made a bunch of mistakes. But we have not seen Indiana make a bunch of mistakes in a game all year long. Like, if you look at some of the best teams in college football this year, if you look at Alabama, they made a ton of big time mistakes against Florida State. They made a ton of big time mistakes against Georgia. And yeah, they played great games, but they also had games where they have a lot of faults. Look at Oregon in this game. This was their version of that. Ohio State threw a really bad pick six against Miami, and they really, really struggled and made a lot of dumb mistakes in that game. Like, almost every team in college football that has been elite this year has had a game or two where they have made so many big mistakes that have cost them a win. Indiana has yet to do that. They haven't had a game where they fumbled it away. Like, yes, you can say that some teams have had their worst games against Indiana, and that's why they've lost. We've yet to see that from Indiana. They haven't played that bad game yet. So you have to give them credit for being, it's not like they're the only ones that are just taking advantage of bad games. They're not having the bad games. Like, they don't make mistakes. They don't stack errors upon errors upon errors. That's not what they do. I mean, just look at Indiana's drive chart in this game. If you want to say that Oregon just gave them the win, look at their drive chart. They started off with touchdown, then they had a punt, then they went touchdown, 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 touchdown. 4 straight touchdowns against a really good, really well coached Oregon defense. And then they had 2 punts in a row, and they ended the game with a touchdown and another touchdown. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 offensive drives, and they converted 7 of those into touchdowns against one of the best defenses in college football. I don't understand it. There is no explaining how good this Indiana team is, how well they execute things. It really is just completely unreal. And I wanted to give one more shout out to Elijah Surratt in this game. 7 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They just win. Like, these receivers win against man coverage. Charlie Becker, that's another example. Charlie Becker didn't play for like the first 6 games of this season. He was not supposed to be one of their starters. He was supposed to be a backup. Like, he didn't do anything at the start of this year. And then in the Penn State game, when Elijah Surratt goes down, he fills right in, goes crazy in that game, and ever since then has been a consistent, dominant piece for this Indiana football team. And he's a guy that's supposed to be a backup. Like, Indiana's depth is still really, really good, and it has been all season long. And I feel like they're not getting enough credit for that. So I mean, just you cannot shout out Indiana more. You cannot give them enough praise. They are so, so good. And I picked them to win the national championship back in October. I picked them to win it again when the tournament started. I haven't picked against them since the Oregon game when they played in October. And I am so glad that this was the team that I selected to ride with. They make me so happy. I love this team so much. I'm going to be cheering for them probably in the national championship just because it's such an unreal story. And it's been such a fun year for Hoosier Nation. But that being said, I wanted to give a big time shout out to Oregon as well. They had a great season. 11 wins in the regular season, 2 wins in the college football playoffs. If you were to tell Oregon at the beginning of the year, hey, you're going to go 11-1 and you're going to win 2 playoff games, they would be happy with that. They would take that. Almost anyone in the country would take that. So it was a great year for Oregon. They had some big time wins, and they had a great, great season for sure. And even in a year where they battled a lot of injuries, like their number 1 receiver went down before the season started. And they were battling injuries at the running back position all year long, on the defensive line for sure, on the offensive line for sure. Despite all of that, they were able to make it all the way to the college football playoff semifinals. And it was a great year for Oregon. It definitely was. And I just wanted to say, like, I already can hear, like, I know people are going to start talking about Dan Lanning like they talked about James Franklin. They're going to say, this guy's great against the small schools. He can win against the little Big Ten teams. He can beat James Madison. He can beat Texas Tech. But when he plays the big boys, when he plays Washington in 2023, when he plays against Ohio State in 2024 and Indiana in 2025, he can't win them when they matter the most. That's what I can hear people saying that. And honestly, I completely disagree. I don't think that talk is warranted at all. I think it's ridiculous. When Dan Lanning came to Oregon, his first year was 2022. It was a little spotty. The Oregon program, and this is not a historically dominant program, the Oregon Ducks. I mean, they have 0 national championships. They have not been one of the elite college football programs throughout their history. And right before Lanning got there, the program was under Mario Cristobal. It was really up and down. I mean, they were getting blown out by Utah at some points. And then they had some great years. They had some great wins, but it was really rocky. Dan Lanning comes in and steadies the ship. In his first year in 2022, they won 10 games. 10 wins in your first year in a program is not an easy thing to do, and Lanning did it. And in his second year, They went 11-2 and got, or in his first year, they got 3 top 15 wins. In their second season, he got another top 15 wins. That's 4 top 15 wins in his first 2 seasons. I know they lost to Washington twice, but that Washington team made it to the national championship. The next year, in 2024, he went 13-1 in his first season in the Big Ten, had 2 wins over top 3 teams, including the eventual national champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes and the eventual semifinal team, the Penn State Nittany Lions, in the Big Ten championship game. Then this year in 2025, he goes 13-2, wins 4 games against top 15 teams, and had a great squad that made it all the way to the college football playoff semifinals. In his first 2 seasons in the Big Ten, in the regular season, Dan Lanning has gone 23-1. That is fantastic coaching. He's done a great job hiring coordinators that have gotten hired off towards other places, but he's done a great job hiring coordinators. He's been great at recruiting, great at looking at the transfer portal and finding good pieces that fit with his offense. He's been a great coach. I have nothing but respect and praise for Dan Lanning. I think all the talk that we're going to hear about him in the next few days, I think is utterly ridiculous. I think he's one of the top 5 coaches in college football, and I will stick to that 100%. That is a great coach, and I am not worried if I'm Oregon. Their future is bright. It's always going to be under Dan Lanning. They've got a great team over there in Eugene and a great head coach for sure. But that being said, this is Indiana's night. This is Indiana's season. They're the story of college football right now, and rightfully so. Another dominant win for the Hoosiers, another great performance. And, Curt Cignetti, he's enjoying this. As much as you want to look, or you want to sit there and say, he's just sitting there scowling the whole time. It's not even look like he's having fun. He's enjoying this. Like he's smiling at the end. I love what I've seen from Curt Cignetti. He's such a great coach. And, it's just been a phenomenal Indiana team to watch. I can't wait to break down some of this game on the film side later this week. But if I'm being completely honest, it's late. I played a lot of pickup basketball today. And I went over to a friend's house to watch the Indiana game. So I'm pretty tired. And I'm going to go to bed. But thank you so much for watching. If you take one thing away from this video, it's not that Indiana's awesome, or that I love Charlie Becker, or I love Fernando Mendoza, or that I think, Dan Lanning's a great football coach. It is that Jesus Christ loves you. He loves you so much. And any burden that you might have, whether it's work-related, family-related, personal-related, whatever burden that you are feeling right now, just always know that true peace and true comfort is found in Jesus. Like, I promise, I'm looking at you right now watching this video, I promise that if you take your burdens and you give them to Jesus, he will make the best of them. And I always like to look at the story of the multiplications of the loaves in the New Testament, in the gospel. When, this little boy sees this big problem of all these people being really hungry and thirsty, and he has food, he has his 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And what he could have done is he could have shared what he had. And I think we could all acknowledge that would have been really good for him to do, is take his 2 fish and take his 5 loaves and share it with those around him. But instead of doing that, the boy took what he had and he gave it to Jesus. And Jesus took it and multiplied it and fed everyone. So if we can take what we have, the good and the bad, and give it to Jesus, he will make the most out of it. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. But again, thanks so much for watching. God loves you. God bless. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe, and go Hoosiers. Go Hoosiers for sure. So thanks for watching, folks.